This is the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl, episode number 180. We are recording this, our Christmas special, on the winter solstice, the longest night of the year.
The darkest vortex of the northern hemisphere, December
Well,
21st.
there are no nights long enough for me. I live by night, my friend, and so do
Of course,
you.
yes, we do.
Well, and what about this story I have heard tell of you, even in the cradle or even as a 2-year-old refusing to go to sleep?
Well, the first couple of years, I do remember, I do have a few memories before I could talk. I do have a good memory that way, but it's not extensive. My mother did tell me that she was going to basically lose her fucking mind when she had me. Her reasoning to have me, I think she wanted more than one kid, but more so is that my older brother was so easy. She's like, oh, what's everyone complaining about? It was easy. Then she had me, and and I didn't sleep for 2 years, according to her. And I just, I wanted to be out there, alert in the action. I don't remember that. I do remember later being furious, being sent to bed and being wide eyed, lying in bed, hearing adults in the other room having a good time, and me being excluded from that, which was infuriating. But yeah, supposedly I didn't sleep for the first 2 years, and
Party monster right out of the gate.
I guess so. Made to be a musician. But as as we're talking about this, I know you also have some very interesting sleep patterns that I don't think I've seen in anyone else but you.
Well, and it's interesting because Mark Hurtado, who I just came off of tour with doing the Suicide Tribute, he has, and he's the only one I've ever met that has the same sleep patterns as me. And we actually take notes on tour. Now, we don't necessarily go to sleep or wake up at the same time, but we go to sleep and wake up at the same amount of time, which is very strange. And since this is our Christmas special, I thought I would bless you with a piece I wrote on my sleep patterns called Elusive Bitch. It's about insomnia. I was actually asked to write a piece for a book all on insomnia. So that's going to be my little gift to you and everybody else. So just sit back and enjoy it. And I know most people, if they're visiting their parents, they're going to want to sleep as much as possible or get out of the freaking house.
Big time.
All right. Well, Tim, I do love sleep, that elusive bitch. But sleep that seems to hate me. I mean, it's just the way it is. I can't seduce her into tolerating me for more than a few hours a night or at a time. A fickle cunt. I mean, she'll allow me into her warm embrace 5 minutes after my head hits the pillows. I'll be swimming into a delicious nocturnal numbness, but before REM has a chance to cock his nugget against mine, Sleep, that frickin' creep, screams for her night nurse insomnia and kicks me in the head like a bouncer at a funeral party, faster than you can even say the quick and the dead. That is a reference for you, my friend. I no longer am the sleep, that is. Elusive bitch. Now, I have tried over the counter as well as various prescription medications, including but not limited to Ativan, Halcyon, Xanax, Valium, melatonin, marijuana, valerian root, heroin, but only twice. And that was just a numbness I did not want to face again. I've tortured myself with exhaustive workouts, followed by hot baths, preceding tantric sex, where I practice deep breathing and in connection with meditation, visualization. None of it worked. I gave up nicotine, sugar, spice, and even tried a light box. It didn't help. I quit coffee for years. I mean, come on. Anyone who has suffered from decades long insomnia knows damn well that ain't going to last for too long. I mean, you need all the caffeine you can suck down to function above the semi somnambulent state of dream deprived sleep that results in a numb narcosis, a permanent twilight zone, rarely fully conscious and never completely asleep. You feel exhausted but jacked up like an electric rigor mortis that short circuits the neurotransmitters, creating a dense fog of chronic irritation that can cloud even the simplest of tasks. Now, I'm not referring to just a few nights or even months of unfit sleep. No, nor the youthful buzz which invigorates the bloodstream rife with recollections of uncountable naughty deeds performed under the influence of designer cocktails. No, no, no. This miserable ditty is a song to the sirens, to the janitors of lunacy, who have certainly not made peace, for there is none to be made after nearly half a century of stalking Morpheus, which I've done, that cruel trickster who occasionally grunts the occasional performance, and then upon a stage so soaked with blood and guts that the sheer magnitude of his insane cruelty creates a magnificent terror from which I am throttled awake, soaked in sweat, choked by tears, and stifling a scream, which unleashed, I'm sure, when you wake even the very dead themselves, those lucky bastards to whom sleep is an eternal given. Now, maybe this is why I need to watch forensics before I go to bed, because it somehow just, it really does calm me down. But maybe because people are dead, so they're sleeping. I'm even in the cradle. I couldn't sleep. I mean, I can recollect conversations I was too young to fully decipher. The winning hand held by my father on a typical Friday night poker marathon, the date the gas bill was due, useless junk. I started sleepwalking at 6, talking to the electric sockets in the living room. I think I even saw Peter Pan once. I'm not sure. I was directing traffic in my pajamas in the middle of the street, urinating. I do remember urinating in the refrigerator once. I don't know how I accomplished that feat. But, I suffocated my younger brother with a ratty teddy bear. And by the age of 9, I was already so terminally sleep deprived that my nightmares were so gruesome that horror films read like bad comedies to my twisted pre-adolescent psyche. Now, youth feeds on adrenaline. I mean, who needs sleep when you're a rambunctious teenager, carousing through the night gallery of new experience, or rampaging 20 something, hell bent on accomplishing as much as possible, living life to the fullest, glutting on potential and wilding in the streets, desperate to make your mark before that grump Thanatos comes calling. And I mean, what the hell? I'll sleep when I'm dead becomes the young psycho's mantra, screamed into the crack of an unforgiving dawn who was always able to creep up on you faster than you could ever dream of outrunning her. Now, for most of my life, I just didn't need more than a few hours of sleep a night. I mean, I felt great. I glowed. I got a shitload of work done. I loved the twilight. I still love the twilight hours between 3 and 6 a.m. when the rest of the world seems to have died, or at least, they're not crawling at my ass with their noise, their complaints, their problems, their demands. But enough is enough. Or let me rephrase that. Now there just isn't enough ever. I am jolted awake after a 2-hour stint kissing slumber. She bastard kicks me out of bed and snickers as I begin my night watch. I mean, and it will not welcome me back into his cozy surround for at least another 24 hours. It doesn't matter how exhausted or drained or in pain I am, and pain will happen. Migraines will multiply when you're running on fumes. A throbbing band of tension will expand outward from the temples, threatening to shatter the skull. The bones in your face splinter into glass shards exiting through your eye sockets. Vision blurs. Breathing becomes shallow. Your shoulders spasm and lock, grinding into your neck, freezing ligaments. I mean, chronic sleep deprivation encourages the buildup of toxins in the body. It creates a permanent irritability. I mean, you're always itchy somewhere under the skin, between the muscle and bone, deep inside the tissue. Tendons seem to feel as if they're scraped raw. I mean, as if infected or inflicted upon by an army of slow moving insects whose minuscule mandibles rub together in delight as every inch of skin stings, the eyes twitch, the temples throb, the brain feels like it's bleeding. But I mean, after all, what's one more day, month, decade robbed of sleep and stuck squirming in a state of agitated limboescence when you will have an eternity of peace to eventually look forward to. That is, if you are foolish enough to believe that, yes, death will be peaceful. It will caress you like a black velvet embrace. All those shattered nerves and twisted muscles that have revolted now for so long that even beyond the grave, you fear that they may still be screaming for relief. Relief, like deep sleep, which I am convinced I may never, at least not in this lifetime or possibly even the next, ever experience. Now, I don't have as many pains as I once did, probably because I'm just used to my cycle of non sleep now.
Maybe. All right. So interesting. So the non-sleep is maybe cured some of your pains, or but the pains were keeping you awake. I don't
Oh,
know.
I mean, the worst thing is to be awakened by pains, and that is horrible. Yeah, that does
Oh
happen.
yes, that has happened to me.
You
That
know
is the
that
worst.
I mean, you're sleeping and suddenly spasms. Oh, please get the frick out of me! But they say that the older you get, the less sleep you need. I mean, I may end up, like 20 minutes at a time, but I feel fine now. I mean, I feel worse if I sleep too much.
Oh,
So
now the thing is, even an anesthesiologist can't put you asleep. Didn't you wake up during
uh,
surgery once?
yeah, thank you. Yes, for reminding me. That was probably the worst moments of my life where I was literally floating above my body. I mean, first of all, anesthesiology is not an exact science. I'm
No.
not the only one that's had this happen to. I did see a special on it years after I experienced it. I'm floating above my body, praying to every demon, god, goddess to just end the pain. Hell must be physical pain with no mouth to scream. Doctors are joking, twiddling around inside me.
Oh God.
It was absolutely astonishingly horrible. But I have to say, once you experience that kind of pain, oh please, nothing else hurts as much as that.
I've only been knocked out for surgery once, an appendectomy, and I mean, that was not even, that wasn't sleep. That was just like black out, and then awake, like, hey, what's shivering, and like, what the fuck's even going on here? But
Well, I've been under the gas a few times, and I had an appendix that well, they took out looking for the pain inside my body as well as lymph nodes and various other things they tried to extract. When as a youngster, I had a lot of stomach pain. I never have a stomach ache now, but maybe I extracted the trauma that caused the pain. Hello.
well, sure. I'm sure. Sounds like you
Cut it
had a.
out. Cut it
I,
out.
I mean, Michael Jackson had that professional anesthesiologist to kind of just check
And
out.
look what happened to him.
Well, they killed him. I mean, they weren't. He wasn't being knocked out enough, and then he wanted too much, and then never
it
came back. I mean,
it does I mean, it does happen. I mean, it's really, I mean, any I don't trust anybody to knock me out.
so this is today. For the listener, we're recording this on the winter solstice. Are you sensitive? Do you need light? Some people just need light. I mean,
I
can
like
you?
light. I mean, I lived in Barcelona for 8 years. I lived in LA. I lived in New Orleans. I mean, I do like light. I like to be awake when the sun is coming up.
But
And
you never lived in like Scandinavia during the winter, or
oh
you know,
God, no.
so you've never experienced things like places that get really dark
Why would I
for.
do that to myself?
I don't.
Can't
I
afford to live there.
I don't know. You have friends up there. I mean, Tom Garrettson. He's.
Yeah, well, the highest rate of suicide are in the countries that have the least amount of sunlight.
That's actually a myth.
Is it?
I've been following. The suicide rates with countries around the world are as diverse as the world is.
Okay.
I mean, right now it is a lot like Belarus. Like there are places way up
Right.
there, but there's also dealing with poverty and all that stuff is really high. And Scandinavia will be there for a while, but so will Swaziland or places like in sub-Saharan Africa that are right on the equator and 12-12, and they're just life's pretty tough, right? I mean, suicide is kind of a.
It also could be quite cyclical in a sense. I mean,
It's funny you say that because
interestingly enough,
it does cycle through the planet and it varies quite a bit. It's like tides. It's kind of
Well, and
Yeah.
I remember this great documentary and film that was about this place in Wales that happened not that maybe a decade ago. I can't remember the name of the film right now. I'm going to have to look it up. Where there was a spate of what they thought was teenage suicide, and the film is really beautiful. Bridge End, it's called, one word, Bridge End, and they couldn't figure out like why there was this spate of suicides. Like, and some of the theories were is it the power tower that's there that's causing such migraines that when you get it you just have to commit suicide? Was it mass hysteria like sometimes happens in
Yep.
Japan where
Happens everywhere, mass hysteria.
right?
Yeah.
Or was it a serial killer that they never found? And the film
Ooh.
is really beautiful, Bridge End, and really great article also in Vanity Fair because they've never decoded why this spate of suicides happened. And the film it beautifully depicts also like just the friendship of these teenagers that that you can't leave here unless you die. It's really quite beautiful. It's called Bridge End.
I'll check it out.
Beautifully done. But it does. There are spates of hysteria. I mean, look, America's been in a spate and a state of hysteria for the last 6 years,
Well,
if
I mean,
not longer.
well, speaking of potential serial killers, I mean, you're talking about sleep and how when I was younger, I would get the sleep paralysis and
Yeah,
how terrifying that was because
horrible.
my brain would be awake and then I would hear things in the room and I'm like, please wake me up. And then I'll explode. My heart would explode out of my bed. Like, I'm awake. I'm moving.
Yeah, and the only time I've experienced is that was by doing melatonin, a natural, supplement. But anybody that wants to do melatonin, either for jet lag or for sleep, you have to take a really minute amount because melatonin is naturally made in the body. But there's just even 3 milligrams could be too much for some people. So that's what but I've also had dreams where I've only heard audio. Those are terrifying.
I've had those where it's like
terrifying.
like bam, and then I wake up, but nothing happened in the room. It was clear. It's like I've definitely had that, or the dream there'll be a sequence like of a falling, and then there'll be the impact of something hitting something, and that will be the bam. But then there I am in my room, 3 a.m, pitch black. Like, wow.
My most terrifying dream with audio was I heard a marble rolling across the floor.
Oh, that's creepy.
And then I heard gangbangers shooting out my windows. It didn't happen, but that was the marble rolling across the floor led to this dream horror of the windows being shot out. It was terrifying.
Well, sometimes on the airplane, I will be there'll be turbulence, but I'll be sleeping and I'm kind of semi-awake. I'm not, and this is really kind of upsetting. In my dream, it's like, okay, we're going down. This is it. Like, we're going to crash. And I'm actually at peace with it. It's like, okay, that was a good life. And then I wake up and it's like all calm.
Nothing's gonna happen. I love turbulence. I'm never afraid on a plane. I'm never afraid on a plane. I love turbulence. Although there was just an incident where I think it was a Hawaiian Airlines where a lot of people got hurt with the turbulence.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you don't wear your seatbelt in case there's a fucking crash. If there's a crash, you're fucked. You wear it for turbulence. So I mean, that's why they want you to have it. But I was connecting the sleep paralysis and that serial killer who was a hospital hopping. He's being pushed from one to the next. Whatever he was injecting in people's IVs, it would create like a sleep paralysis where the person would be aware over a development of weeks. Like, he's not coming back. And he's like, he or she's like totally aware, like, well, they're going to turn off these machines. They're going to kill me.
Yeah.
But I can't tell them, don't do it.
A non angel of mercy, angel of terror. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Horrified.
So it's the winter solstice and Christmas is coming up. An estimated tomorrow, Thursday, because we're recording on Wednesday, the 21st. An estimated 100 million drivers, not people flying in this country. 100 million fucking drivers, and you got this
almost a third of the country.
You got this, exactly. You got this crazy storm. So I want to visit my mother in Massachusetts, but I'm like, when am I doing this? Because tomorrow morning there's a little window of time before the storm hits. Now on the coast it's gonna be a rainstorm, but it's gonna be like 50 mile an hour gusts.
Well,
Million.
I sent you this, and the subject was, "Are you sure?"
Well, that's the thing. So
Right.
everyone's going to try to beat the storm, and I'm like, I don't think I'm going to leave tomorrow.
Well, I
But
don't
then it's
know.
going to rain and storm, and of course, I'm not just doing the coast the whole way. Like right around New Haven, I cut up
Yeah.
through Hartford and up through there, and then there it might be snowing because not on the coast.
Well, and who knows? Because it's so wacky. The storm has been so wacky, like storms are becoming totally wacky. Who the hell knows? I'm not leaving my lair. Thank you very
Well,
much.
I don't know when to leave because it's like, because then it's going to rain, storm for 36 hours, and then it's going to drop to subarctic temperature. So is it going to be like a fucking ice sheet everywhere?
Yes,
I,
probably.
I mean, this is, and of course, that super Arctic blast is coming from way up north. It's going to dip all the way. There might be deep freezes in
Yeah,
Florida.
yeah,
And the question is, will Texas be
yeah.
able to handle the deep freeze? Because they couldn't
Ah,
last time. They
no,
couldn't
they
last time. And
can't.
people were getting like
No.
$20,000 electric bills.
It's ridiculous. I'm really happy about this next story because it's something
Sure.
I've been waiting for. And, I always believe things are cyclical, things come around. And I'm really happy to say that there is this is in Brooklyn. And the headline is Luddite teens don't want your likes.
I read about this.
So, at the Central Library and Grand Army Plaza in Brooklyn, there's a weekly meeting of the Luddite Club who just refuse to be on social media. They say that they promote a lifestyle of self liberation from social media and technology. And they sit around and they paint pictures, they read books, they discuss the books they read. I'm really happy about this
How old
because
are these kids?
they're, teenagers. So, I
How
mean,
did the story leak if they're not on these social things?
I guess people saw them all sitting there with their sketchbooks
Oh,
and
funny.
painting, and and they're reading like Crime and Punishment. They're reading like Art Spiegelman's Mouse. They're reading, philosophy books, like Kurt Vonnegut. It's fantastic because people read like 140 characters now, and that's all they have the patience for. I think this is just really fantastic. I'm waiting for the Liddites to form.
Ah,
And
yes.
yeah, well, that'll be around the next corner.
Well,
Trust me on that.
what I secretly want from this secret society you're telling me about, because maybe I just like to entertain myself with wicked thoughts.
Who doesn't?
I hope basically it gets celebrated and all these parents are like, oh, that's a simpler time. These kids are great, but in the inner circle, a kind of Lord of the Flies thing develops, and they all start just being the meanest, the worst clique in New York City of teenagers. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, maybe they'll be the spin cells.
Well, actually, connecting with this, so right now, sextortion is becoming a
Oh,
big problem,
horrifying.
particularly with teenage boys. And you have these guys, they're guys posing as
Yeah.
teenage girls, and they're these kind of vulnerable boys who often hadn't had a girlfriend or some shit like that. They're getting them to basically do dick pics and all this shit. And then they're like, well, if you don't want it on the World Wide Web, I need $5,000.
There was a great episode of Black Mirror about this like 3 or 4 years ago because it's the other side of catfishing.
Right, exactly. So this kid Ryan Last. He ended up committing suicide. I
mean, he's not alone.
Yeah. No. The reason his name's brought up because there's a trial right now, and it was part of a ring. There's a few rings like Nigeria and Ivory Coast, but they would have these representatives in the United States or something. There's this guy there. What's his name?
What I don't understand
Jonathan
is
Kasi.
The Nigerians are also the biggest catfishers for middle-aged women. I mean, this is what's ridiculous is I don't know why that this isn't brought. Maybe now it will be brought to attention now that it's teenagers committing suicide as opposed to middle-aged women being bilked of all their money.
Well, I think what they realize is you have lonely middle-aged women who are checking out of their fucking dumb families and they're alone. Their kids are probably grown up and they want this kind of romantic figure. They're vulnerable. And so they're being exploited. And then you have teenage boy incels. So basically whoever's feeling the most emotionally vulnerable and lonely
Right.
are the people who they're picking on. Duh, right?
Terrible, terrifying,
Yeah.
horrible.
So this is
And
becoming.
again, and it's part of what social media does to divide youngsters from real experience, because it's better to have your heart broken in a real experience like your first
Well, good
love
point. Good point.
than to have your neck broken because you've been catfished.
Right. There you go.
Oh
Oh
my
my God.
gosh. I know.
Well, so
Terrifying.
I was in Florida, of course.
Where I will be soon. Go ahead.
When are you going to
Yes.
Florida?
The end of January with
Oh,
Joseph Keckler. We're doing some shows. We're going to visit the Orange County Cultural Museum where Figurehead, James Faherty, a lot of Shaney's posters. And, it has a year-long exhibit of what Figurehead has accomplished,
was
both in
this
releasing
postponed?
records.
Were you supposed to do this earlier and this is postponed,
No,
or is it
no,
no?
no,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Keckler's at the Ringling Museum the
Oh,
27th
that's
and
right.
28th, I believe, doing a residency. Let me just check that date. And then the 27th and 28th, Keckler's at the Ringling Museum. And then we're going to Orlando the 29th of January for this to the museum there, and then doing a show on the 30th and maybe hitting Miami after that.
Yeah,
So
sounds like a good time.
it's
Well,
gonna be a good time.
well,
So tell me about
yes.
your Florida adventure.
Well, this is not mine. This is a story.
Oh,
There's this. I forgot to get her name. I got the son's name. I should.
I mean, Florida is really,
It's weird.
there's so much disaster that goes on there. It's outrageous. It
It's
really
huge. It's a
is.
big population, and it is the transient byproduct of all of America. So every demographics at their worst is
Yeah.
represented there. But I enjoy Florida, so there's
Well,
also a
that's
lot
the
of
thing.
great people.
I enjoy it as well, but it is it's wacky.
So the this woman's having a party, a Christmas party, and she starts harassing her son, Toby Brower. Um, you got to clean your room. You got to clean your room.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then he snapped and he hit her over the head with a frying pan and then stabbed her a bunch of times and then kept on hitting her over the head with a frying pan until the handle broke. She somehow lived, but she was all fucked up and hospitalized eventually. But in the meantime, when she's on the ground, he gets the mom's car, gets some money, drives off, and he calls his best friend who supposedly has autism.
Oh,
And he calls his best friend and he says, demanding him, loan me your gun. I want to go over there and shoot my mother to death. Now, the kid with autism said no, not because he was necessarily moral. I think it's because I think with autism, people just like these kind of certain ways things are organized because the kid offered him a knife instead. So whatever the ritual was about how he keeps his guns, like he didn't want to change that, like it won't leave the house or something like this. But he offered the knife anyhow. But Toby Brower was caught, and his quote to the detectives was, "I don't like cleaning my room."
I mean, no, I mean, what this is so outrageous. Now, I don't know if you heard about the 6 teenage girls in Toronto who stabbed a homeless man to death for his alcohol.
That sounds.
I mean, what? And they're between 13 and 16. I mean, what the hell is going on?
That's Nordic. That's the opposite of a Florida crime. That's a Nordic crime.
But it's so outlandish. All right. Well, speak about crimes.
Well, hold on. One last thing. The woman she's in critical condition, but they did get a quote from her, and her quote was, "Toby did this." All right, that's it.
Speaking about crimes against oneself. Man with World War I explosives lodged in his rectum sparks bomb scare. Hospital evacuation. Okay, the case left doctors shell-shocked. A French hospital was partially evacuated this week after a senior citizen arrived with a World War I artillery shell lodged. Why don't they just get pegged? I mean, they're pegging themselves with all these.
I mean, this guy's usually that's not the age I would consider for such a thing.
88-year-old patient
Yeah, I know.
visited the hospital and to have the antique explosive removed, but instead sparked a bomb scare. And so an emergency occurred from 9 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. last Saturday evening. It required the intervention of bomb disposal personnel, the evacuation of adult and pediatric emergencies, as well as the diversion of incoming emergencies. Quote, we had to manage the risk in a reactive framework, the representative said. When in doubt, we took all the precautions. And the thing was freaking huge.
Well, it looks like one of those giant like dildos. This is huge.
World War I, used in the military. The doctors were just horrified. It was 8 inches long, 2 inches wide, straight up the old poop chute, and obviously inserted for fun.
Well, a lot of Europeans have World War I and II memorabilia because if you're out on a farm, you got it, or someone passes it on through the family.
Yeah, well, there's no reason to stick a bomb up your ass.
Well, he's 88, maybe a little dementia. Couldn't find his sex toys.
He couldn't say he fell. He couldn't say he fell on it. Or what about the last story we had that thieves put it up there? I mean, come on.
Yeah, maybe he was trying to pass it. He's trying to bomb the toilet, as they say. I don't know what was going on, but
I can think of about 100 better things to stick up my own ass, and I'm not going to give you a list right now. But
we've talked about that. I mean, there are records of things that have been surgically removed from people's asses, and that's a very common ER, an emergency.
Light bulbs.
I know the weirdest one I've ever read. I told you, a pair of pants. I mean, what are you thinking? I mean, how?
Why? I mean, that's just, there's no explaining some people's desires. And I don't
But the light bulb we've discussed, I mean, when that shatters, you've got a million little dust shards. And it's a long procedure where they're just like with tweezers. You're never gonna get it all out. It's just like I don't
stick it. Yeah, I can't even go. I have no. You know what? A splinter in the finger is bad enough. Imagine or don't. It's terrifying. Well, Tim, I don't know what the weirdest Christmas gift you ever got, but this sounds to me like it would be pretty amazing. The quote is, they were absolute professionals. A 1,763-pound ball of craft gin was stolen from the bottom of a Swiss lake.
Whoa.
Okay. Yeah, so it's been reported stolen from the bottom of Lake Constance. The missing booze, and aptly named Lake Constant Gin, calls for a 100-day soak at the bottom of the Swiss lake. Now, according to reports, time spent underwater gives the gin a very special aroma, I guess. And the team said that they've been producing this gin for 3 years. But okay, so almost all of the anticipated 395 bottles of the gin had been sold, with each handmade bag prepared and ready to be shipped out just in time for the holidays. However, as the team arrived at the coordinates for the gin ball, it was nowhere to be found. The divers searched for the gin 3 times, with all attempts yielding no gin. Following day, 2 divers joined on the hunt, still no gin. And to add further complexity to the case, it was also attached to a 500-kilogram concrete slab. So somehow, about 2,866 pounds of steel, gin, and concrete were looted from the lake bottom. So, of course, the makers of the Lake Constance gin said they're absolute professionals. Well, they have no idea. The Maritime Police joined in the efforts. No avail.
Inside job. I mean,
you
wouldn't even know about it.
Valued at $38,173.
But who are you gonna sell it to?
Yeah, who's gonna know that it's down there?
I don't get it. I heard a story. God, I'm going nuts out there. I heard a story about some people, treasure hunters. These people look, scuba divers. They'll go all
Oh
over the
yeah,
world,
yeah.
and someone found off of like Northwest Africa some old 16th century Spanish
Right. Yep.
war,
Booty.
warships with like kind of treasure, blah blah blah. They had a market, and then of course the next day they go there,
Gone.
gone. They did research, and it was like
An inside job.
well, no, it was like some Ivory Coast. A bunch of the locals got it, and they sold the old cannons for steel, like melted down steel. It's like these like things you'd see like in the Natural History Museum. Like, I mean,
Oh gosh.
everything's just funny that way.
Well, pirates are still out there, but I speak about an internal dilemma. So I don't know if you heard about this, but 2 days ago, shock waves from the sun had opened a crack in the Earth's magnetic field, and it
Whoa.
could trigger at any time a geomagnetic storm. Now, a mysterious shock wave and a gust of solar wind has sent a barrage of high-speed material smashing into Earth's magnetic field and opened a crack in the magnetosphere.
Where is the
And
crack? Is
well,
how that work?
I'm
Does it
I'm
shift, or is it?
I'm getting there. The barrage of plasma could lead to a geomagnetic storm, but so far it hasn't happened. So the shock wave's origins aren't exactly known, but scientists think it could have been from a coronal mass ejection launched by the sunspot AR3156, the fizzing region on the sun's surface that released a flurry of at least 8 solar flares in mid-December, causing a brief radio blackout over the Atlantic Ocean. Now, sunspots are areas on the sun's surface where
Whoa.
magnetic fields, they're created by the flow of electrical charges, and knots turn into kinks before suddenly snapping, and the resulting release of energy launches bursts of radiation called solar flares, or plumes of solar material called coronal mass ejections, CMEs. So once launched, they travel at speeds in the millions of miles per hour, sweeping up charged particles from the solar wind to form a giant combined wavefront that, when it's pointed at the Earth, can trigger geomagnetic storms. Now, they can occur when the energetic solar debris, mostly consisting, and to me, this is as devastating as the climate change problems that we're having. So they occur when energetic solar debris, God knows what that consists of, electrons, protons, alpha particles, get absorbed by and subsequently compress the Earth's magnetic field. So they zip through the atmosphere near the poles where Earth's protective magnetic field is weakest and agitate oxygen and nitrogen molecules. Now, this, could be the next extinction, but it didn't happen. So I think we're okay.
We're
But
okay.
anyway, the storm did create cracks in the magnetosphere, which remain open for hours at a time, enabling some solar material to stream through and disrupt satellites, radio communications, power systems. So this was only a G1 class, which is fairly weak, caused some minor fluctuations in power grids, but more extreme geomagnetic storms, however, can have far more serious. They can not only warp the planet's magnetic field powerfully enough to send satellites tumbling to Earth, but can disrupt electrical systems and even cripple the internet. Well, the Luddites won't care about that, and neither will the Liddites.
No.
Hell no. Anyway, astronomers have known since 1775 that solar activity rises and falls in cycles, but recently the sun has been more active than expected, with the sun's pissed off. Nearly double the sunspot appearances predicted by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So, anyway, they think that the sun's activity is going to steadily climb for the next few years, maybe reaching a maximum in 2025. But the largest solar storm in history was 1859. It was called the Carrington event, which released roughly the same energy as 10 billion 1 megaton atomic bombs after slamming into the Earth. Oh my God.
So how do they know about that one? 1859? We had the tools to measure that?
Well, they said after slamming into Earth, the powerful stream of solar particles fried telegraph systems around the world and caused auroras brighter than the light of the full moon to appear as far as the Caribbean. So if a similar event were to happen today, scientists warn it could cause trillions of dollars worth
Oh,
of damage, trigger widespread blackouts, and endanger thousands of lives. A previous solar storm in 1989 released a billion-ton plume of gas that caused a blackout across the entire Canadian province of Quebec. But this might not even scratch the surface of what our star is capable of hurling at us. Scientists are also investigating the cause of a series of sudden and colossal spikes in radiation levels
right.
recorded in ancient tree rings across Earth's
So how
history.
would if you're in an airplane, would that
Well,
what
who
would
the
happen with that?
hell knows? More to be continued. I'll keep you this is one of the quotes. An internet apocalypse could ride to Earth with the next solar storm, new research warns. Devastating solar storms can be far more common than we thought. Well, and also they could be causing gray whales to get lost. Tragic.
Wow. All right. Okay.
Well,
That's
I'll keep well, this is from Live Science, which I am a fan of, so I will keep my ear
yeah, that's
to the
exciting.
sunspots. Well, I mean, because we always think that the enemy is from within, and many of them are, but there's also, unpredictable things
I
happen.
wouldn't call that an enemy, just a reality
The
that
angry sun.
that doesn't really sit well with our existence. Um,
Well, I kind of like it, but anyway.
so going back to the Christmas theme, there's been a shortage now for all you
Of elves?
no of Santa Clauses for all you kids that still believe in Santa Claus. Maybe don't listen from here on.
I'm sure they
As a
don't.
trigger warning, but no. So yeah, supposedly
COVID.
during COVID, a lot of the people that would
Old people.
do the Santa Claus get kind of like slightly overweight, older guys, they're dead, or they are afraid of like, I don't really want to be in a mall or an event and have a million kids sitting on my lap.
People say that they're afraid of clowns, which I never got. I'd be more frightened of Santa Claus, some fat old dude in a suit having kids sit on their laps, telling them all kinds of secrets and promising them shit they'll never get. I just don't like the concept.
Santa Claus. Well, I mean, did you ever see Silent Night, Deadly Night 1 or 2? I think there's even a 3, probably a 4 as well. I've only seen the first 2. That's about a serial killing Santa Claus going around.
Well, it takes all kinds.
I liked it. I liked it. I mean, it was some kid. I think he witnessed like a Santa Claus a guy when he was a kid dressed up as Santa Claus, like raping and murdering his mom, and then he was like put in a Catholic orphanage, and then
he became the bad Santa.
But then there's like a sexual trauma, and every time there's like any kind of sexual thing that he witnesses, it just sends him off, and he dresses up as Santa Claus and just starts killing people every time he's around sex or something like that. And his kind of horror movie line before he kills someone, he goes, naughty, naughty.
Well, I like a man in a good costume, but I can think of a few a lot better than Santa Claus. Thank you very much.
Well, the typical Santa Claus costume is what was that, a Coca-Cola ad kind of character? Like they kind of came up with what Santa Claus is supposed to look like.
Well, we could take it back further than that, because the red and white really comes from the most psychedelic mushrooms on the planet.
Well, that is, yeah, exactly. We, as a lot of the listeners know, that is why, because Jesus Christ himself, the actual historical figure.
You mean the wizard, the magician?
Was not born.
The drug dealer?
Was not born during the winter solstice. It was born, the historians think, like late September, early October, around that time. But yeah, this is all just because, well, the pagan winter solstice celebration was cooler and was kind of dominating whatever the Christians were celebrating. So they're like, oh, we'll take that. I mean, a pine tree in Rome in your house, come on, all that stuff. Yeah, but the red and white polka dot presents under the tree are supposed to represent the mushrooms that pagans would take as a psychedelic.
That reindeers love to eat.
The reindeer, the flying reindeers, they would follow them to get the piss out of the snow. It's all about a pagan psychedelic experience. The chimney is basically a guru in little hot igloo things, dropping their little psychedelic ornaments so people can trip. So the Christmas that we know, although it's been appropriated by consumerism and turned into like go to the mall and buy shit. I don't know how that happened, but it was originally a very psychedelic experience on during the winter solstice. And why, when you're in a cold temperature and you're kind of pent up all together in a small place, why not take a trip
Exactly.
outside? Why don't you trip outside and
Yeah.
you can go anywhere, not to digress, but it's connected. One of the biggest distributors of DMT in Mexico, who got busted, figured out a way to still bring it in to jail when he was there, and he was giving it to people, some he claims were wrongly accused, who had life sentences. And they're in tears, like old motherfuckers who were like 70, going, "I've been in this cage for 40 years, and
Now I'm free.
you've
Yeah.
liberated me. I could finally go anywhere." And the message being, people feel trapped in their lives and all that stuff, but you can always dive in deep and really enter different dimensions and universe.
I mean, I can't think of a better time for psychedelic experiences than when people are trapped back with their parents. And I think they should actually dose their parents.
Did you ever, I know you've taken psychedelics, did you ever do it in the presence of your parents?
Oh, God, yes. I mean, my one experience when I was living with my cousins is I walked into the kitchen where my aunt was, and I just fell flat on my face, and my cousin knew I was. I think I might have been on THC, angel dust. My cousin just goes, "Go to your room." I'm like, "Yep, I'm going to my room." Floor's wet. Floor's wet.
Like a sitcom. You have your grand entrance, and then the whole studio is claps and cheers,
yeah,
and then you just fall flat on your face.
Yeah, I'm like, floor was wet. Floor was wet.
Hey, that's fast in your dose. Floor's wet. Floor has you running up to your room. Oh my God.
I mean, I spend as much time as possible away from any familial contact. So, but yeah, I mean, I was, in the basement, mescaline, LSD, whatever.
What was the strongest for you? Mescaline?
Well, I don't know. It was it was the first drug I did. And
mescaline was the first drug you did.
Yeah, 12.
You're not the only one that's told me something similar to that. That's always seems so.
Well, sorted. I mean, I really think that, the quality of acid that I was able to do in the early 70s was something that did send me on a righteous path.
So you definitely didn't have the gateway experience. You went right for the jugular.
Well, I did. I went right into it and I loved it.
Yeah, well, that profoundly changes your life at that point.
Well, I mean, doors of perception, it expands everything. It really, I was ready for it. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Yes. Open the doors of my basement so I would escape out of it and run into the night wildly, going to see, some of my amours in the middle of the night.
Hello. That's a different story. Or would you do that on mescaline or acid? Like,
yeah, of course.
So you'd be tripping.
Oh, yeah, and then escaping out my basement bedroom window, running to the freeway overpass, contemplating whether I should drop a rock or not, and then hitting hitting the nearest hottie.
So when you're 12, 13 and you found these guys who had a car, for instance, I don't know how old they were, between 16 and 25.
17. Yeah. Well, I mean, old enough to have cars.
Did you find them or did they find you?
I mean, hey, living one block away, it was hard to miss. Let's put it that
way. Okay.
Yeah. Hello.
Okay. All right. And how old were you when you stopped believing in Santa Claus, or did you?
7.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, I told this before, but when my brother got a lump of coal, an onion, and a potato because he was so bad and cried, I was very happy for that. But I knew it was all a sham. Yeah,
well, it's just funny because my dad had a Santa Claus costume that I remember when I was like 5 or something. He'd wear it sometimes, and I would be like, I think that's my dad, kind of thing. But it's always weird, like when the kid has to like act for the parents. The parents want the kid to continue to believe, and you're like, I don't want to let my parents down, kind of thing. But years later, I was in Chicago with my brother. My brother and I were young adults, and I was in college. My half brother, who was 6 at the time, was a little kid. My dad shows up, and he has a Santa Claus outfit. and my younger brother's kind of catching on. Like he's kind of keeping a nice distance, kind of looking at him, squinting. He knows something's wrong. It's kind of like we witnessed the moment where he realized, hey, this whole
Right.
Santa Claus thing's bullshit. And there we were. It's kind of awkward. And then it's like, I guess we got to leave now because he wasn't going along with anything. And I remember this day we're back in the car and it's Chicago. It's like 10 degrees and just like steam coming out of my father's mouth in the car going, well, that was a fucking disaster. And of course, everyone bursted out laughing at that time. But,
I don't know why nobody dresses up as the Easter Bunny. Why do they always have to dress up as Santa Claus? You know,
I mean,
who's the fattest relative?
Does anyone dress up as a leprechaun on St. Patrick's Day?
I know that's true. Does anybody dress up as an angel with a bow and arrow on Valentine, the Cupid? I mean,
that'd be cool.
Yeah.
And does anyone dress up as a pumpkin head on Halloween? I guess people dress up of anything on the Halloween.
That's
does anyone dress up as like a Minuteman on 4th of July?
Yeah, well, I think they do actually. That's the
right. There's like those people. Yeah.
That's kind of the scary reality. Anyway, I think we deserve it to ourselves to go have a hot toddy and end this special.
The hot toddy is we'll end the special now, but real quickly, the hot toddy, is that your Christmas warm beverage of choice? I mean, what about like Glühwein or eggnog?
Oh, no. Look, I'm a hot toddy kind of gal all year round. I like the you've had my hot toddies.
They're saved me. They've actually
curative.
They have medicinal properties that are, yes.
Well, the fresh ginger, the cloves, the Ceylon cinnamon, the lemon, the honey. I mean, what more do you want? It's a witch's brew. And what's better on this, the winter solstice, than one of my hot toddies? You can think about that all night long. This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl, episode number 180. Try not to suffer too much through the holidays.
Yes.
Yeah, we get it. Good luck.
All right. Safe travels, everyone.
Yep.